All right, this topic is very simple. When one side has all of the power, all of the weapons, all of the legal authority, that is the side that carries the responsibility to de escalate. That's law enforcement, not the random citizen who just got pulled over, stopped, questioned, or is just overall having the worst day of their life. When the state gives you a badge and a gun, it's not giving you uh, a, 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 a perk to use in social situations, it's giving you a duty, and at the core of that duty, is um or sorry, that duty comes with state-backed force and preventing unnecessary harm. That's literally the job. If you're a trained professional with lethal authority, you don't get to say, well, shouldn't the citizen have calmed me down? Citizens aren't trained in conflict resolution. They're not trained in crisis intervention. They're not trained in threat assessment. Officers are. So if the trained professional isn't responsible for de-escalation, then what exactly are we training them to do? And if the untrained civilian is responsible, then we've basically outsourced public safety to whoever happens to be standing there, which is retarded. Citizens in police encounters are often scared, confused, or overwhelmed. A lot of the time, if they are interacting with police, they've had a horrible day already. They might not understand commands, they might freeze, they might be in crisis. None of that is a crime, and none of that magically transfers the responsibility of de escalation onto them. Expecting perfect behavior from a panicked civilian while giving the unlimited benefit of the doubt to an armed professional is not a system, it's a gamble. Uh, the other side will probably say, well, citizens should just comply, but compliance is not de escalation, compliance is obedience. De escalation is a skill that you have to actually be trained in and learn. Slowing things down, reducing tensions, reading the situation, and preventing force. These are not the same thing as compliance, and pretending they are is how we end up blaming civilians for not managing the emotions of the person with a gun. My opponent may also say it's a shared responsibility, which, sure, citizens can help de escalate, but a shared responsibility is not an equal responsibility. When one side has the power to take a life in a split second, that side carries the heavier burden to prevent de escalation or to prevent escalation. And legally, this is already how this system works. Courts hold officers to standards of reasonableness and proportionality because the state has a duty to preserve life when it uses force. Citizens have no legal obligation to perform conflict management techniques during a police encounter. The state does. We also know that police departments that put an emphasis on de escalation training see a reduction in the use of force cases and a reduction in officer injuries. The only safe way to conduct policing is to have the officer be in charge of de escalation. Um, they have the authority and they have the ability to kill you in an instant. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. My first question is, what would you define as de-escalation and escalation as?
There's just like basic definitions or like how it's actually carried out. Which are you
Basic de-
asking?
basic definitions. I mean, relevant to the topic, but yeah, basic definitions.
De-escalation would be cooling the tensions effectively, bringing a hot situation where anybody could do anything down to a reasonable situation where you are just having essentially a normal interaction. Escalation would be the exact opposite of that. It would be bringing more emotions into an already charged situation. It would be responding to emotion with emotion, things like that.
Okay. Fine. And do you think that it's always the correct response from a police officer to de-escalate?
Yes.
Okay. If there is a situation in which the officer's life is in stake, what do you think the responses should be?
De-escalate because that means that their life is less likely to be at stake. As I said in my opening, we see statistically that de-escalation, a focus on de-escalation, reduces the amount of officer injuries because when de-escalation is used in these situations, the officer is less likely to get hurt.
Okay, say an officer is in direct danger to their lives and they might get, say, shot. Do you think that the officer should talk them down?
I think they should try to beforehand. It's the same thing that you do in any hostage situation where an officer or a hostage could get shot at any point. You have hostage negotiators that are trained in de-escalation.
Okay, say whether you're an officer or not, someone pulls a gun from their pocket and points it at you. Are you going to try to have a conversation with them?
It depends on the situation. As a cop,
Depends
it
on.
depends on the situation. As a civilian, no, you're not gonna have a conversation with them.
Okay, why would a cop have a again, someone just reaches into their pocket or some other compartment, pulls out a gun, points it at you. Why would you have a conversation with that person?
Because they already have their gun out and it's already pointed at you, and they can shoot faster than you can shoot.
Okay, fine. Okay, fair enough. Say that they are reaching for a gun. Okay, they can reach their gun, or you can reach for your gun. Are you going to stop and have a conversation with them?
You can reach for your taser.
For a taser, you know that tasers aren't 100% effective. The only 100% effective technique of reducing a situation like that is using lethal force.
Yeah, use a taser. Use a rubber bullet. Use anything.
Okay. So do you think that cops should give up their lives just to not risk or not to harm the person who is pointing a gun at them?
Well, are we talking about the pointing a gun at them, or are we talking about the reaching for it? These are two different scenarios that you
Yeah.
presented.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
one?
reach their gun. They should yeah, if someone's reaching for the gun, do you think that they should just give up
Use a
and
less than lethal.
let the
Use a less than lethal.
So I just want to establish that I am a liberal and I don't always support cops and I don't always support their actions, but that's not what this is about. And I recognize that overly escalating and causing situations to become deadly unnecessarily is wrong. Everyone acknowledges that, but that's not what this debate is about. This debate is specifically about de-escalation. Is police's primary job to de-escalate? And the answer is no. The purpose of police is to stop a criminal activity from happening. Whatever the best techniques of doing that is what a cop should do. So, say there is a citizen who is not complying with an arrest or not complying to stop criminal activity. If you were to say that they should always de escalate, then there is no recourse that a cop can do. They cannot apprehend them and they cannot start to use physical force. That is an unacceptable situation. If a cop can, or if a criminal can infinitely just deny any commands of a cop without them being able to escalate it, then we are in a situation where cops are just simply not able to do their jobs. In situations that we talked about during the cross examination, a cop, again, legally and probably morally is not forced to give their life in order to save the life of someone who is actively a threat against them. Even cops have the right to self-defense. If someone is posing a immediate lethal threat to you, you have the right to respond, and it is in a cop's best interest, and it is in our best interest to have the cop respond lethally. It is just the reality of the situation. If you're in a situation where a cop is incapable of escalating a situation against you, then you can get away with anything. If a cop gives you a command, you can just say no. What are they going to do if they can't escalate? If you want to get away with a crime and you want to shoot a cop, then what are they going to do? They can't respond in kind by shooting you back. My opponent talked about less lethal methods, but that's honestly absurd. Again, it's no different than leaving a cop open to any and all forces, any and all dangers, and having to sacrifice their lives. If you say you cannot defend yourself appropriately, then cops are just incapable of doing their jobs. Tasers are only sometimes effective, and rubber bullets are unbelievable. Rubber bullets are something that you would use for crowd control. If someone is attacking you currently, all rubber bullets are going to do is cause them slight pain or maybe some major pain, but I'm not going to drop my gun. I'm not going to throw my gun away because I got hit by something that hurts a little bit. Um, that is why in most of these cases, cops pull out their firearms. And I see my time.
Before I get started, I just want to say that rubber bullets can kill. They have been known to kill people. You're stupid. Anyways,
Well,
um,
if the purpose is to kill with them, then that kind of goes against your point in the first place, right?
no, I'm just saying. You said it's minor pain they can kill. Anyways,
And
so I
I
would like
pulled
you.
that back.
I would like you to show me where in the prompt it says a cop cannot escalate.
It is
The
so
responsibility
you
to
said
de-escalate is on the cop. Does that mean that they always have to de-escalate?
well, first of all, you said that always de-escalate in the cross examination. And also, again, it's not about to say that a cop's responsibility is to de-escalate is to put that above their primary duty, which is to stop a crime in action.
So, no, it's not. As well, on that point, the majority of what a cop does is not stopping a crime in action. The majority of what a cop does is investigate crimes after they have been completed, do random fucking paperwork, and sit on the side of a highway waiting to see one person going 5 over the speed limit. The majority of what they're doing is not stopping crime. This is just simply inaccurate. Now, um,
Can I
I
respond to that?
have sure. What do you have?
Okay, so if a cop is waiting on the side of the road, waiting for someone to go 5 miles over the speed limit, what is their response to do that? To pull them over. If you're pulling over someone over for speeding, you are necessarily
Yeah,
stopping
so
someone
notice
from
how I
doing a
didn't say
crime.
speeding.
You can call that a
Notice how I
minor.
didn't say actively pulling somebody over. I said sitting on the side of the highway, waiting to find somebody that might be going 5 over.
That's why I asked
There's
for
fucking
clarification,
sitting.
because the answer I mean, well, that's not the case. What a cop does in that situation when they're traffic policing is waiting for someone to speed or commit some other traffic crime to pull them
Yeah,
over. If
they're
you're
waiting
saying that
for a crime. They're not actively
cops in that
stopping a crime in process. They're waiting to hopefully maybe see a crime.
um
Um.
that that doesn't really go against my point, but okay.
Anyways, further questioning because it's my time. You said that under this prompt that a cop's primary or it is the cop's responsibility to de-escalate in a situation and not the citizen. You said that that means cops cannot defend themselves. Where in the prompt is that? Where does the prompt say a
Um
cop cannot defend itself? Where does it say that a cop cannot use less than lethals, use lethals? Where in the prompt does it say any of this?
Again, so if you're prioritizing de-escalation over again cops doing so
It
a
doesn't
cop's
say
purpose is to do
it
whatever
doesn't
it
say
takes, whether
priorities.
or
It
not
says it's
that's
the
DS. My
responsibility of them.
point my point
It
is
doesn't say
that whether
prioritize.
is not my point is de-escalation again is not the priority, or it is not what their purpose is. Their purpose is to do whatever it takes, whether that's de-escalation or anything else.
So I've noticed that you haven't given a single argument as to why the citizens have the responsibility to de-escalate. Why is that?
Sure. So I was that was an argument that I was going to give, but I didn't. I just didn't get around to it. But the responsibility of de-escalating is on the citizen because they are the ones who are initiating the encounter. Right.
No, not usually. Usually it is the cop initiating an encounter. Usually it's the cop coming up to somebody or pulling somebody over that has initiated this encounter.
Right. But the initiation of the encounter was the crime itself. The person who started this entire
What
thing.
if I'm just walking down the street and a cop thinks that something is suspicious and wants to come talk to me? Has the cop initiated this?
Well, in that case, the cop would initiate this, but then at that point, the cop has no right to do any kind of policing. They can on in their own prerogative try to
Okay,
investigate, but
let's
they
give a
have
scenario. Let's give a
constitutionally
scenario.
no rights to police.
They come up to me on the side of the street because they think that something is suspicious. They think I might have done something. And they start questioning me. I am scared of police, so I'm a little bit standoffish in this situation because I did nothing wrong, and they're just fucking coming up to me and asking me a bunch of questions. Whose responsibility is it to de-escalate this situation?
Well, there would be no escalation or de-escalation. It is at a medium level. You guys are having a conversation. You might be a little bit anxious, but there is no de-escalation that needs to happen.
So they should match my energy, is what you're saying.
They should match your
They should
energy. Yes.
also react in a panicked manner, in a scared way. They should react like that as well.
No, they should
Really?
match
What?
your
How should they
level of
react?
intensity. Escalation is concerns the
Sh-
intensity of the conflict, okay? So when I say match your energy, when we're specifically talking about escalation, I'm talking about they should match your intensity of conflict.
Right. So should they be talking to me in a panicked and scared manner, or for example, a calm tone?
Whether or not they're panicked is not an issue.
And I'm not asking what they feel. I'm asking how they respond to me. Should they respond to this panicked and scared citizen with panic and scare, or should they react to this in a calm manner?
Whether or not you're that again, I think this is immaterial. Whether or not
No,
you're panicked has nothing to do
it's
with the
very
intensity of
material.
conflict.
It's very material because a calm tone when a scared citizen is talking to a cop and a cop is talking back in a calm tone, this is a form of de-escalation.
Assuming there is a
So it's
level of
very
intensity in the conflict, which
yes,
isn't the case in
which I
this
already
example that you're
established,
giving me.
which I already established. No, there is.
No,
The
that's
the
not
conflict
conflict.
is the fact
That's
that I'm
personal feelings.
standoffish towards this cop, and I'm acting standoffish towards this cop, as I said when I set up this scenario. The responsibility is on the cop to act in a calm manner, and that is de-escalation. And I think you would agree that the cop should not be yapping back, all scared, all panicked, or standoffish.
I think that, I mean, again, that's preferable, but that's not really the issue. And I've also admitted in my opening that in cases where escalation makes sense, then fine. If that's the technique that best gets your purpose across, that's fine. But every single conflict resolution possibility is completely valid in different cases. To say that again, it's beholden on you in all these situations. I know you didn't say absolutely all, but in essentially any cops encounter to de-escalate, it's just it doesn't make any sense for the majority of police encounters.
It makes sense in the vast majority. There are very small exceptions, such as, school shooters. But even then, cops successfully de-escalate school shooters quite frequently. At the end of the day, there is almost no situation where de-escalation is not the valid response. And either way, if it is a situation where de-escalation is not the valid response, it's still not on anybody else other than the cop to do any de-escalation. That it's still entirely
Okay,
on the cop. It's nobody else's responsibility. It's not somebody who has never been trained in conflict management and de-escalation to de-escalate. It is the trained professional that is an agent of the state with the power to kill. It is their responsibility to de-escalate.
okay, let's take another example. Say someone is being held for like assault, like someone got in a fight and now police are trying to like get them under control, right? A police comes, starts the conflict, starts the interaction, says, "Hey, you need to do this, this and that." Okay? So now there is a situation between the cops. This person is wild or whatever. They are aggressive and the police is trying to get them to comply. Who if we want the ideal situation, which the person complies and says, "Okay, I'm going to stop fighting. Okay, I'm going to stop attacking and calm down and relax and stop the situation," um, would that not be a situation where, like, the person who is perpetrating the crime should be the one to bring it down to a
What you're describing is
not like
exactly what I talked about in my opening, where I said compliance is not de-escalation. De-escalation is a trained skill. These are two different things. Simply complying is not de-escalation. De-escalation is a
you
skill.
you
It is
admitted
using
during
it's using a
you
calm
admitted
tone to a scared citizen. That is de-escalation. It is
no you
learning how
had
to handle your own emotions so that you don't freak out and make a situation worse. That's de-escalation. That is something
no
that
it's not
no
just that.
natural civilian should be forced to be the one to be the primary responsibility in.
Okay, that is not the only thing that is de-escalation. You admitted during cross-examination that all de-escalation is taking a situation from intense conflict and decreasing the intensity. That can mean a lot of things. It means a lot more than a calm tone. Okay, and compliance is a form of de-escalation. If there is a conflict between a cop and you saying, "Hey, you're doing something that's a problem. I need to stop you," and you say, "Okay, I'll comply." That is de-escalation because now the conflict between you and the cop that you're doing something that they don't want you to do is now at a lower intensity. Now we can
Yeah,
have
but
a
what I'm
reasonable
saying is it's not
conversation.
their responsibility here. It is the
To
person with the
comply,
gun. It is the person with the gun's responsibility to lower a situation. Most of the time, when you have a citizen that you're trying to interact with as a cop that is not complying, you can get them to comply pretty fucking easily through de-escalation techniques. And that is your
Okay, so
responsibility as the cop. It's your job as the cop.
so if the cop is asking you to comply, how is it again, they're saying, "Do this thing, stop fighting, okay, sit down, stop the conflict." How is it their responsibility what your reaction to that is?
It's their responsibility to continue to try to de-escalate. Your reaction is not
So
their
you can do
responsibility. The cop's job is to attempt to de-escalate these situations so that they can continue on with whatever they need to do.
s
And they are
you
trained
know
to
that
do this.
you're aware that resisting arrest is a crime, right?
Yeah? Uh, So?
Okay, so to say that if you're in the situation where a cop is asking you to stop doing something, whether or not you do it is not your responsibility.
No, I'm
Whether or
saying
not you
it's the
follow the
primary
command is not
it's the primary responsibility of the cop to continue attempts to de-escalate.
attempts to de-escalate, whether or not you comply. Okay, but whether or not de-escalation happens is your choice because at the end of the day, the only way that this is going to calm down is if you stop doing the thing that is causing the conflict.
Yes, and it's the cop's job to try to get you to do that through de-escalation techniques. It is their responsibility to do this. It's primarily
Sometimes
their responsibility ahead of any responsibility that that the citizen has.
sometimes if it's appropriate, only if it's appropriate. Listen, that's why I said it's a nice technique that is good sometimes, but again,
Cops
if
have
I'm a cop
successfully
and I'm
de-escalated active school shooters doing
again, it
this.
happened
Active
again, it
hostage
happens sometimes.
situations. It is the it is the correct response as your initial response to
That's not the problem.
99.99% of cases. And it is their responsibility
99.99.
to do so.
I think that the 99% is a little bit absurd. Like I said, it's nice to do sometimes if it's possible to try to make attempts to get them to comply, okay? Um, but that's just not going to happen. If again, it's all down to the citizen who decides whether or not
The vast majority of cop interactions that start out with a non-compliant citizen end with a compliant citizen because of the use of de-escalation techniques.
or maybe because most people don't want to start keep fighting with the cop. Maybe that's just something that's pretty natural for people.
A de-escalation technique could be you're going to get added charges if you continue to do this. And guess what? That works quite a bit as well. That's a de-escalation technique. You've convinced this person to stop resisting. You've convinced this person to comply through the use of de-escalation. Thank you very much for proving my point.
No, the reason that we add charges for not complying is because the citizen is failing to do something that they need to be
No,
doing,
no, no.
which is
That's not what I
complying.
said. That's not what I said. Threatening extra charges,
That's what I'm
verbally
saying.
threatening extra charges to the defendant in a way that is not escalatory is a form of de-escalation, and it works.
But the reason that they can do that is because it's true. Because you can get extra charges for not complying. Because
De
it is on the
de-escalation
citizen to
de-escalation
comply.
in a situation where there is a non-compliant individual that you're trying to, for example, arrest, de-escalation is trying to get this person to comply. What you say, so long as it is not in a way that escalates that situation, what you say to try to get them to comply is de-escalation. So saying, "Hey bro, like come on, just get in the fucking car or else we're going to have to tack on extra charges here." If that is something that de-escalates a given situation and gets the defendant or the citizen to comply, that is de-escalation. And it's also the best way to handle any situation like this. You don't immediately pull
Again,
out your taser
sometimes
or a gun.
sometimes I don't think that reiterating the purposes of a cop by saying, "Hey, here's what you're supposed to do," is again, I don't think that's it might end up de-escalating, but that's not the core of de-escalation. Whether or not the situation is going to be de-escalated is on
What do you
the
think is the
person
core of
who's
de-escalation? What
it is
what
on
are
whether
some
or not
de-escalation techniques? Do you
so
know anything about like
de-escalation
actual trained de-escalation?
de-escalation is whatever causes the situation to resolve. Okay, and the what actually ends up causing the situation to resolve is the citizen complying.
So, do you know any methods of trained de-escalation? Like, there are professionals. They're called cops and also called crisis responders that literally have weeks of training to de-escalate situations. Do you know anything about this training?
I know some about this training, yes, and again, I admitted these are like nice things that can be implemented sometimes.
Right, but it's their responsibility ahead of any random citizen because they are trained in these techniques and a random citizen is not. Let's say you have an irate cop and a citizen is getting a little freaked out because a cop is fucking irate. Whose responsibility is it to de escalate this situation?
Well, it would be the cop, but it would also have been the cop's responsibility in the first place not to unnecessarily escalate, which is again not the issue. That's the issue, not that the cop isn't
So
properly
it's not the
de-escalating the
citizen's
situation.
responsibility to de escalate.
Um, no, in this situation where the question is whether or not the citizen is supposed to uh, de-escalate the aggression of the cop because it is unreasonable. No, it is not their responsibility to stop the unnecessary escalation of the cop. But again, the issue is not that the cop is not de-escalating. It is that they were initially escalating to an
Your claim
unnecessary
is that the
degree.
responsibility is of the on the civilian to de escalate.
I didn't say that in this situation, but I also said it's not the cop didn't fail in their responsibilities by not de-escalating, right? Correct?
Yes, they did.
You keep leaning pretty heavily on the idea that the reason that it is the police officer's responsibility to de escalate is because of training. Do you think then that if we were to better train the citizenry on how to handle these situations and to de escalate these situations, do you think that that would change the onus and responsibility in these interactions?
No, because one has the sanction by the state to kill. The party with the sanction by the state to kill if they feel like it is the party with the responsibility to de escalate. Normal citizens are not given immunity regularly for killing people, whereas cops are.
Does or can law enforcement's responsibility to de-escalate coincide with a responsibility for citizens to obey lawful orders?
Yes, like I said earlier, there can be like should a citizen obey? Yes, of course, but at the end of the day, the primary responsibility here is on the cop to de-escalate. So should the citizen just like person to person, should the citizen listen and comply and not do anything wrong or act scared or anything? Yes, but at the end of the day, the one with the gun has the responsibility to ultimately de-escalate this. The citizen just simply should try to, but they don't have the responsibility to do so.
Yeah, I want to say you kind of took my question a little slightly different, but that sucks. So I did have a backup though. It kind of goes back to your opener. You said compliance is obedience, and you said obedience is bad. By the nature of the monopoly of force going to the government, part of that deal was that compliance in their execution of the law was worked into what the citizenry should do. Now, this isn't saying that like if something corrupt is happening, you should just take it or blah blah blah, not fight back against the system in the ways that we have. But with compliance being obedience and obedience being kind of bad, alluding to what you're saying, are you kind of saying that you just disagree with the whole monopoly in force in the first place?
I didn't say obedience is bad. What I said in my opening was that compliance is obedience, whereas de-escalation is an actual skill. So when you're trained in de-escalation techniques, you have a responsibility to use these de-escalation techniques. As I also just kind of said to Let's Chief, is should the citizen comply? Yes. In any almost any given situation, yes, they should. But I think the level of responsibility for de-escalating an interaction does lie with the one that has the monopoly of the force. Now, I also believe in the Second Amendment, but that's a bit of a separate situation.
Would it change your position if law enforcement officers were issued full body armor, literally head to toe, like a hazmat suit, and were therefore like out in a suit of goddamn armor like a knight of old? If they had better body protection against the threat of physical harm, would that then change your position regarding their ability to react with lethal force?
It would probably change situations which I would justify lethal force. But again, the core of it is if you are being faced with lethal force, the cop has the right to respond with lethal force. So if you're in a full body armor and someone aims an RPG at you, then I still think that you still have that fundamental right, so you can respond to that person with lethal force. And it also goes into my argument of like, again, these all should be used with reasonability, obviously.
It sounded like you were saying if things didn't get physical, then that wasn't conflict. That's called personal feeling, but I feel like a weird line is being blurred there. Would you say it's possible to um, have a conflict based on personal feelings, or is it all solely based on objective fact?
So what the thing there was in my opinion, he was conflating like a personal feeling to the conflict itself. While of course there may be some conflict in that you're standoffish, that is the conflict. Whether or not you're nervous, um, that's not the conflict. And I'm not like he was saying that I should admit that if cops match energy, then they should match the feelings of the person that they're interacting with. And of course, like yeah, of course, your feelings can be like the catalyst for whatever is happening between you and the cops.
Of this instance where some person was ignoring lawful command and in their way escalated. In my opinion, it is right that it's illegal to ignore lawful commands, and in my opinion, ignoring lawful commands is escalating. I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that because you were getting to it, and then you guys switched subjects before I felt like you were able to complete that argument in a way I could understand.
Sure. So I would probably agree that if a officer is giving you a lawful command and you say no, that is a form of escalation. However, the only response at a certain point that you can justify from a cop would be further escalation. By definition, if you are having a verbal disagreement or a non-physical disagreement with someone, and then you take that to a physical level, you are escalating.
So, as I think that we have clearly established, the primary party responsible for de-escalating a situation, if it is to be de-escalated, is the cop. If you call the cops, or somebody calls the cops on you for a suicide attempt, for domestic violence, for a schizophrenic episode, for a drug mania, for a neighborly dispute, we all would expect that the cop would show up and de-escalate this situation. We would hope that the cop would come in and or has the responsibility to come in to a situation where he pulls over the wine mom from down the street and the wine mom is freaking out, shaking in her car. We expect that the cop will de-escalate this situation. When somebody is not complying, we don't expect them to instantly pull out a gun and shoot them. We expect them to de escalate this situation. This is all exactly because they are trained on the matter. They are trained on methods of de escalation so that even when they have a non compliant individual, they are able to de escalate. At the end of the day, none of these civilians involved in this hold that primary responsibility. If they held that primary responsibility, we would have a public safety model that was built on hoping random people perfectly manage their behavior and their emotions when faced with armed agents of the state. This is a retarded way to govern society when we have the option of having a public safety model that's built on professional restraint and training, which is, of course, what exists when the cops have the responsibility to de escalate. I would also draw back to This does not mean that the cop cannot defend themselves. At the end of the day, if the de-escalation techniques fail, yes, of course they can defend themselves, but what matters is the attempt to de-escalate. And we see this board out in helping cops be in less dangerous situations by having we have police departments that focus more on de-escalation than others currently, and those police departments that focus on de-escalation have a reduction in use of force cases and a reduction in officer injury cases after they implement robust use of force training and policies. These help keep the citizens safe, they help keep the officers safe, and the onus for de escalation is always going to be on a trained professional rather than a random civilian who's having the worst day of their life. Because most of the time, if you're having an interaction with cops, either you're having a shitty moment of your life or you've had a really bad day and you had to call the cops, or somebody had to call the cops against you. You are not going to be generally thinking perfectly. This is the everyday for a cop. They should be able to handle it well. That's why they're trained to do it.
So it seems that the my opponent Gorps tries to pigeonhole de-escalation as a topic to techniques that are trained during whatever police trainings, or policies that ask police officers to not escalate situations or try to talk them down. But that is not what de-escalation is. It was which was admitted during cross-examination and by the definition of de-escalation. De-escalation happens when a conflict is resolved. Whether or not the conflict is resolved is not the responsibility, or is not the fault of the police officer, unless again, which I address, they're using unreasonable force. But that is again not the topic. Whether or not a situation resolves is due to whether or not a citizen complies, whether or not the citizen follows lawful orders. Again, if we like take this response, the problem with taking this responsibility away from citizens is that it doesn't ask anything of citizens. He kept saying, well, officers are the ones with the lawful monopoly on violence. And these are really good, these are really nice truisms, or it's a nice point in general when we're talking about cops. And yeah, we like the idea that they are responsible for their actions. But again, relieving the citizen of any responsibility to act properly, and completely admitting any action they do because they're not agents of the government, gives citizens the ability to do unlawful things while putting that responsibility on police officers. I see my time.